Hello, this is Ron Fogelman, co-director of the London Action Festival, and also, for the moment, I'm also working officially for Den of Geek. I'm very lucky today to be at a very special exhibition, which is only happening in London for 2 days. And with me now is Danny Biederman, who's the owner and curator of the Spy-Fi Archives. More about that later. But also we have a very special guest star, who is Chris Corbould, who is the eminent special effects supervisor, second unit director, writer, and general man about town. So, gentlemen, I'll ask you a couple of questions if that's okay. Behind us now, we've got the first stage of the exhibition, and we'll have a little wandering tour. This is from the classic 1960s show, The Man from U.N.C.L.E, which weirdly has a connection with Ian Fleming, and you have something that actually proves that. Do you want to talk about Ian Fleming, the writer, the creator of James Bond, his connection with The Man from U.N.C.L.E?
Yeah, absolutely. When that show, Norman Felton was the producer who decided to do a James Bond type show for television. He was going to do it for NBC. And so he decided, because Ian Fleming, you know, the Bond films were out, and there had been Dr. No from Russia with Love and Goldfinger was soon going to be coming out. He decided it would be great to get Ian Fleming involved in it, actually. Fleming, day after day, never came up with anything. And finally, there was the last day before they were splitting, you know, and finally Fleming took some Western Union sheets, and he just jotted down like ideas like diamond smuggling and murder for hire, or, you know, something like that. So Fleming had it, and he didn't have anything to show to the network, so he hired Sam Rolfe, you know, who had done Have Gun Will Travel and a lot of other things, and to develop a show. And so Sam developed it completely from scratch, coming up with the U.N.C.L.E. organization, and, you know, Mr. Solo would be the agent, and et cetera, et cetera. He developed it. He gave the prospectus for the show to Felton. Felton gave it to Fleming. He sent it to him and said, here, can you read this and make notes? What do you think about it? And Fleming did that. He made 2 little changes in pen in the prospectus. I have that, and that's in the exhibit.
That is one of the original copies of the script for the very first episode of Man from U.N.C.L.E, and within that, Danny has got the handwritten notes from Ian Fleming himself. So one of the things that you've got here, which was an iconic prop from the Man from U.N.C.L.E series, was the pen communicator, and that's one of the original ones from the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and not only that, but you've got the 2 versions. So in the original series, there was a kind of a cigarette case communicator that was a disguised as a cigarette case. There's the original prop from there and the case that it came in, as well as the original art prototype, the art that was used for the design of that. Now, why did they change the design of the cigarette case to the pen communicator, which became probably the signature item for the whole series?
Yeah, that's correct. The reason they changed it, as Norman Felton explained it, was the show became a hit largely because of college students, that they suddenly discovered it and they went crazy over the show. With especially young people so interested in The Man from U.N.C.L.E, he felt concerned that the fact that the communicator was disguised as a pack of cigarettes would be a bad influence on kids. He didn't want to promote smoking among kids. And so he decided to, next season, phase it out and replace it with a pen that turns into a communicator. That's why that happened.
So you're telling me there is such a thing as a responsible producer? That's really, I think that's a revelation in itself today, folks. We've only got a handful, about 60 key items from Danny's collection, which is actually 4,000 pieces, and it really dates back to the very first James Bond film. And there's a very cuddly chap that's here with us today. Tell us about the little 8-legged creature that we've got here in the glass cabinet.
That is a prop tarantula that was used on the set of Dr. No, the very first James Bond movie. In the movie itself, it's a famous scene in that movie where Sean Connery as James Bond is asleep, and there's a tarantula crawling up his arm, up his body at night, placed there by one of Dr. No's agents. So they used a real tarantula, you know, of course, for the scene. But they had created a double, you know, a prop one for publicity purposes, for setting up, you know, the shot and everything like that, and lighting and whatnot. So I acquired that tarantula.
Chris Corbould, how did you get your first gig on Spy Who Loved Me, your first James Bond film?
I was working for the special effects company in Pyramid Studios, and we were given various projects to do, one of which was the ski stick. There were other projects that we were working on. And then later on, when they went up to the newly built 007 stage, a few of us went up and helped out to blow up the submarines and, you know, everything in the stage. It was that was my opening to the world of James Bond, really.
Is there a prop from the Bond series that you would like to have that you haven't had your hands on yet?
It's never, these things are not going to become available because they're held by, the company and everything. But I mean, my favorite, I think, from the whole movie, I mean, there may be two, but this one is the attaché case from Russia with Love, because that's my favorite Bond movie. And I think it's just the coolest piece that works so well in the story. It's not overdone or anything. It's not, doesn't stand out just for itself, but it's woven into the fabric of the story, and it's a very clever piece.
Although you don't have the attaché case here, you do have a prop that was associated with that, and it's at the exhibition right now.
Yeah, it's here on display, and it's a prototype that was for the knife. In the actual case, there's a knife that pops out, a little dagger that pops out the side. James Bond pushes the button in a crucial scene when he's fighting Red Grant in the train car at the end of the movie, and the knife comes out, and it actually helps save his life. And this was just during the making of the case. This was like a prototype for creating that knife.
And Chris, what's the moment or effect that you're most proud of across the 15 films that you worked on James Bond?
I think the tank chase is probably one of the most memorable, because GoldenEye was a real proving ground. Everybody, there hadn't been a James Bond for 7 years due to court litigations, and everybody was on a real mission to make sure that James Bond was still relevant.
We're standing now in front of the Mission Impossible section of the Incredible World of Spy-Fi with owner-curator Danny Biederman. There's two very special items here, ones that sort of not only defined the TV series but influenced the movie franchise as well. I'm, of course, talking about the self-destruct tape recorder.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
The recorder I have, and I have been tracking it down for decades because I heard it became available, and it went through auctions, went through private hands. And I kept tracking it and trying to get it. It's a miniature one. It wasn't used in that many episodes, but it's the only original tape recorder that was custom made in the Paramount Studios prop shop.
And the other item, which I think is amazing and was a big signature, particularly for the TV series, was the masks that Master of Disguise Roland Hand, who was played by Martin Landau, used. And you've got one of those original masks, which he would, he'd look exactly like one of the villains or someone that he needed to impersonate. And at the end of that, he would rip off this mask and it would reveal that it was him. And so you have one of those masks now. How did that come into your hands?
It belonged to Martin Landau himself. He had it apparently in his closet on a shelf, and over the years he just left it there, and it collapsed, and then it solidified into just like a rock. I researched, what do you do about that? And there was some prop guy or I don't know, he did a video and he showed what you do when that rubber thing collapses. I followed what he did, and it involved soaking it in hot water and everything to make it malleable. And I personally reshaped it into the closest I could get to the full mask, and then it hardened up again. And so it looks kind of strange now, but at least it's around, it's as close as I could get it to what it originally looked like.
And Chris, in terms of the drawing board, when you set the task, and you were mentioning before about James Bond working on Omega watches or having to build ski sticks that fire guns, what's the creative process that you follow in terms of thinking, right, I've got a challenge and now I have to actually realise, can this actually be done and will it be convincing on screen? How does your mind work at that time when you're set?
Well, obviously it starts up here, coming up with the idea of what are we going to do? How can we need a gadget in there for Bond to get away? Everybody collaborates on the film. It could come from the director, myself, could come from production designer. Once we've settled on what that gadget's going to be, then we get the base product. It could be a watch, or it could be something we have to build from scratch. So, I've got a team of guys, and we all get together and, what's the best way to make it? You need multiples of them because, actors tend to have a tendency to drop them halfway through a shot, and so in a million pieces, so you always build multiples of them.
Once again, we're just at the Mission Impossible section of the London Action Festival's presentation of the Incredible World of Spy-Fi, and I want to give a thank you to Chris Corbould today, and also to Danny Biederman, the owner-curator of the Spy-Fi Archives. Thank you very much.